coming. I just don't know where he is right now. So this is the Park Commission meeting of August 25th. The meeting is recorded, so just be careful of what you screen share because everybody will be able to see it. Here's Dave. Let me just do a quick roll call of attendance. Susanna?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
And Dave?
Yes, I am here.
Dave looks like he's at town hall, but he's really not.
Sitting outside. He's sitting outside the church.
He's in the best place to be.
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Lunenburg, Massachusetts. I'm at the picnic table across the street from the town hall.
Are you really? All right.
Yes.
Okay. I honestly thought you had it as
That's amazing.
I thought you had it as like a doing what Chris is doing. I thought you were in New Hampshire. All right.
This is what happens when you leave This is what happens when you leave your hot spots in New Hampshire.
All right. Well, this works. This works. All right. Do we have any public or board comment before we get going?
No.
Seeing none. The next item is approval of minutes. We actually don't have any minutes ready. So we thought we had somebody to do our minutes. We actually did. I had gone back and forth with her a couple of times and then she resigned. So the town's back to square one and trying to find somebody. So I'll work with Anna and Susanna to get what we don't have done, hopefully for the next meeting.
I have a disclaimer. There was one night I was driving home and I called Karen. I said, I'm going to do all the minutes tonight. I'm going to pull out an all-nighter and do it. And she said, no, don't do it. We have someone. So
It was, and then it was the next day that I found out that we didn't have anybody. So
Right.
yes, Anna did. She did say that.
so I need to get myself ready for another all-nighter and just getting it done. But
I will help. I will help. So,
Okay.
all right. Rob, do you have any updates or any information for us?
So on updates, I believe we've almost locked down a temporary director position. He's a local gentleman. He's very energetic and I think he'll do a great job. So we're happy to get him on board hopefully soon. I did, in a conversation with Mark Birch of Lakeview Landscaping, talked about poison ivy. I think Dave, you probably had a conversation with him about that. So there's some areas of poison ivy that I'm going to have treated. I think it's a series of 3 treatments. So I'm going to have Mark do that. Outside of that, I don't really have much for you.
Okay.
can I ask for a couple updates? Any Rob, we had talked about the removal of the light posts are falling on Marshall Pound and Pound. It always gets me. Do you have any updates on that? I know it's been raining a lot.
It's been raining a lot. My guys have been super busy. It's just one of those things. I haven't gotten to it yet. The update is I see him, the one that's leaning over every time I drive by now. So that's what I think about when I'm driving by.
Oh,
I will get to them, I promise. It's just some things have to take more precedent at the moment. And with all the rain, we've had lots of issues. So the guys are out dealing with that. If I knew how to run the backhoe, I'd go out and get it myself.
no, I hear you. You know, there are two, they're leaning. It's just visible from the street. It's just one. The other thing is, I know the Town Beach is closing this, I think this upcoming weekend. Is that what it is?
Yeah, this weekend's the last weekend.
Okay. One thing, and I touched base with Karen briefly, but I had a resident reach out to me at some point during the summer that they were not able to pay cash at the entrance. And that's something we had addressed here. And I know with Kayla leaving or going maternity leave, some of the communication got, broken and not everything got around as much. But do you know if we ever accepted cash at the entrance?
In previous years,
No, this year.
I don't believe we were, no.
Okay.
Everything, they had the ability to take cards, and I thought that was the preference. I thought that's how things had been left, that there would be no cash.
So we sort of yes and no on that comment. And then we did some more research and actually found out by mass state law, we were required to take cash if we can't exclude cash from anything.
Okay.
So, I mean, at this point, there's 4 days left.
Right, right.
That's probably a moot point, but it's something that next year we're gonna definitely have to address.
Okay.
Sure, we're accepting that. How about the beaver situation down at Marshall? Are we,
So the guys were again tied up today. I looked at it this morning. It's draining. But yeah, so the beavers are back. They are essentially damming up the existing grate that's there at the outlet pipe.
okay,
So we've already gone out at least once to clean that since they've been back at it. We've got to get back out there again. For the moment, that's what it seems like they come back, we clean it one day, they've been back that night and blocked it up again. They're not doing it's not so bad that, I mean, the pond level is up right now to the point where I'm not comfortable with it. So hopefully I'll be there tomorrow with the machine so they can pull that up and clean it off. But it's an ongoing thing and we have to think about what's going to happen there. So for the moment, we'll just keep up with the grate until if for whatever reason it gets worse. But yeah, they're definitely back.
okay,
So I did not know that they were back. I'm happy to hear they're back. They're actually one of the few animals that will eat some of the lily pads that have overgrown there. Is ever the plan to remove them like we did previously, or is it the plan that as you look forward to find other ways to remediate the problem?
Well, you and I had talked about other ways, so I still have to look at other ways. So at the moment, I don't have, and unless it's a true emergency with them, I won't remove them yet, just because it's not the season. I think we're out of season. In an emergency, I believe I could get the permit to do it, but right now it's not. We can deal with it right now because it's not horrible. It's draining. It's they're not going way up and. We're checking it every day. So, but no, I do want to, if there's another way we can do it where we don't have to remove them, because obviously, as you can see now, removing them isn't always, it's not a cure-all, and we know they come back. So if I can do it without, having to remove them year after year after year, I'd much prefer that. So, that's still something that's going to get in the works. But yeah, that's definitely something that's on my radar, is to talk to someone who I know. The one that I've heard of and know of is the company is actually called Beaver Deceiver, and they've done a number of them, and they're kind of the pioneers in doing it. So I may have to get someone out here to take a look at it and give some thoughts.
There's another company, it's actually, they're a non-profit company, it's called the Beaver Institute. And they offer classes, they have ways to remediate things as well. If you want, I can send you their website.
Yeah, if you want to send me their info, that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Rob, you had sent an email earlier about trunk or treat.
Yes. Oh, that's the other thing I did want to talk about. So the president of the Lunenburg Business Association sent an email into Kayla regarding trunk or treat and offering to co-sponsor or help put on the event. I was just going through my notes. Kayla had left me some notes on some of the things that were done last year. So I don't know, it's not, I have to look. I don't know if I have all the contact information or how we want to do it, but if the commission has, any thoughts, if they want to pitch in and give a hand, it's something I know, obviously, it seems like the community liked it. And if we want to keep it going year to year, I certainly want to facilitate that. So I'm open to suggestions, open to any help if you want to offer help. Otherwise, I'll talk to, I believe Wendy was her name, and see how involved they want to be and go from there. But it is something I think we should do, and since we're kind of really don't have any fall activities, at least that's something we can do. It's for the community. And
So that's about 2 months out. When do you
Yep.
think we may have a temporary rec director?
hopefully, I don't think the appointment's gonna happen, well, it depends on when the appointment's in front of the select board, which I don't know if that's this coming week or the following week. I'm hoping it's this coming week, and we could probably have him on board if he's ready to start, which I believe he is, on Wednesday.
Okay.
I mean, can we have the name? It sounds like there's been an offer made and accepted.
We're talking to him. I believe the offer's been made. I don't know if it's been accepted, so I'd rather not give you his name.
Okay,
I agree with that as well. So
it sounded like there was an offer accepted, if you're
Yeah,
talking about the
yeah.
planning board, I mean,
Um,
the select board.
so
If I'm not
I-
mistaken, there's no Board of Selectmen's meeting next Tuesday. It's the last Tuesday of the month.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so it's like, unless it happened last night, which I don't know. Okay, so it's,
No,
all
it didn't.
right, so it'll be the following week. I think that's the 7th.
Yep.
So that would be the absolute earliest if there's an offer and he's appointed.
So my thought on the trunk or treat is that, let's see what happens with this gentleman possibly coming on. It's not a super difficult, event. It's just it's more planning. And let's see if he can take that on before, I mean, I think any of us would probably offer to help, but, he's probably more qualified than some of us to figure out how to execute this.
Yep, no, and that's fine. I had given that some thought too, but I think it's a great idea.
me as well.
He's strong, his background is strong with community type events. So it's basically right up his alley. So I think we'll be fine.
All right, perfect. All right, great. All right.
What
so-
would be one other what would be the process at this point, or maybe it's just wait till this person might be on board, but I've been fielding some questions about like kind of the adult soccer that's typically taking place on Sundays on the one of the grass fields at the high school that was run through parks. I know basketball is something else that there's a group that's interested in picking up the basketball where they left off previously at the high school and so forth as well. To kind of wait for this person on board at this point, or do you have any insight in terms of
I
starting that
honestly,
process at all?
yeah, I don't know how those programs were run. I don't,
Okay,
it must have been pre-COVID.
it was pre-COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that was volunteers or how that was run.
Yeah, there wasn't. I know there was an appointee from I believe and I can find out. I'll ask the last guy that did the soccer. There was a parks program and they filled out the paperwork and they collected all the, this volunteer collected all the paperwork and then and the money. It's usually 25 or 30 bucks, I think, per player but it's secure in the field space and things like that.
Well, my thought on that, Chris, is that because it's an activity that would typically fall to our recreation director, that even if for some reason something happens, I would say Rob would be able to give the yay or nay on that without having to wait till our next park commission meeting. And it's what we did last time is exactly what you said. There was a volunteer person who sort of coordinated everything. And we did this with softball a few years back too. So really,
Yeah, softball's another one. Yeah.
Somebody to, contact the school to make sure that we have a field available to us. And then taking the registrations, and I can even go in, one day and sit with Sam at the DPW and throw something up online if we had to. But it shouldn't be a very difficult process. I think that's one thing. Anything that like that, I think we've done similar programs before. It's worthwhile doing them, again.
Yeah, I know there's definitely some interest. So
Yeah, well, this is what I would suggest. If you can gather kind of, I guess, a summary of the information, the things that are required. I mean, obviously, we know we have to talk to the school department about field, what that's going to cost, so what we need to charge for registrations. Just a guide, a draft, so that when this person, if and when he's on board, he can take it and run with it.
Sure.
To Karen, what you said about coming in and sitting down with Sam, this gentleman actually has used my rec before, so even better. I think he'd be able to.
Yeah, I was thinking more like if for some reason it fell through and he didn't come on board, I guess I'm just offering to say, I can come in and help get it set up so we can get that program running. 'Cause
Okay,
it's
that
pretty
sounds
much
good.
a hands-off program. So, all right, it's 7:15. Anthony and Greg, do we have anybody else from your team that we're waiting for?
Negative, just two of us.
So I have invited Anthony and Greg to come tonight to give us some updates on the skate park. So Anthony, I'm going to let you take it and run with it.
Super. Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to update you. Wanted to just give you some quick updates on where we are in terms of fundraising, project development, site exploration, and to obviously field some questions from you all. So we, as you know, have been continually fundraising for the past going on 40 some odd months. We just booked, I think we're about $84,000 that we've raised thus far. And we've got 3 fundraisers scheduled for the next 3 months effectively. Though I heard what you mentioned about Trunk or Treat a few minutes ago, and to the team literally 2 minutes ago, and they all would very much like to participate in that again. So if there's something we can do to be more of an active participant this time than simply just showing up, understanding, you know, where you guys are coming from in terms of staffing, let us know. We're happy to lend a hand. So with that said, we have engaged Mr. Roy here and Mr. Oliva have provided us with a bit of manpower and equipment that enabled us to go do some recent digging over at Marshall Park to go explore the site that I walked with Dave and with you, Karen, and with you, Chris, to take a look at what's underground. So we could provide a topological and soil analysis diagram to some of the skate park designers that we're looking at working with, so they can figure out, you know, site 1 versus site 2. There's obviously TCP versus Marshall Park. What's possible, what's feasible, and how does what's underground affect any of the potential design considerations, and that's literally I got that diagram from Greg a couple of hours ago. So we're going to send that over to them, and we should have a bit more insight into what's possible. I'd say realistically probably by October, November, and be in a position to make hopefully an educated decision on which site makes more sense technically and commercially.
I give you a quick update. We did some digging last week. If that's okay with you,
Please.
Karen. I don't,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
No, go.
absolutely.
And again, thanks to Rob and his team for providing the backhoe. We appreciate that a lot. And so I live across the street from the park, and it wasn't a surprise to me to see that there was ledge on the site because I've done a lot of digging on my property. So we had ledge anywhere from 18 inches below grade to 42 inches below grade. So 1.5 to 3.5 feet. So it's pretty high ledge there. So, and again, we've tested, we did the soil testing as you come into the park from 2A, and then there's the road that was constructed down to the Little League field on sort of the low side of the playground. We tested in that wooded area between the parking area and that road, upgrading of the playground area. And so, yeah, so we dug 4 holes. We have a good idea of what the soils are like. There's not a lot of soil, it's a lot of rock, but be that as it may, as Anthony said, we'll sort of bring the experts in and see what we can or cannot do using that data. And there's a buried electrical line. The service to the park, excuse me, is an underground service that runs right underneath the swing set, if you can kind of imagine that. So we of course didn't dig anywhere near that. But so there's some constraints there, but we'll have more to report in a month or 2.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for either of them?
On the fundraising side, things like that, I mean, What's the I mean, I know there's been an ongoing kind of discussion about size and things like that and so forth. Is there a thought process at this point in terms of kind of what your thoughts are on size and things like that as you're looking at your fundraising efforts and things, and what's that look like at this point?
So ballpark numbers, looks like we need about 200K in cash. We're probably about, realistically by December, we'll probably be, I don't say most of the way there, but we'll have a really good chunk of it. And then the rest of this is really going to be a function of in-kind donations that we're going to have to go after come spring, once we have a design in hand. So
I meant
I'm
skate park. Sorry, I
anticipating-
meant skate park size.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, and all that's going to be dictated by the facility, whichever facility we go after, because we'll have a good idea as to what's buildable at each location. I mean, from a size perspective, reviewing demographics, usage, projected usage, and all the anecdotal data points that we've come across, it's still, we're looking at somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000 square feet. It just makes sense for an area like this.
But fundraising wise, the 200K is for, I would assume, something on the smaller side.
Well, 200,
1,000.
again, all this will be dictated by the design, really, because if you have something that's bowl heavy, right? Bowls are more expensive. If you go with something that's got a bit more flat terrain, you can build something a bit bigger. So it comes down to, what do people want us to build? Because we're going to go through some, community focused or community focus groups to, solicit feedback from the community to make sure that what we do build is of interest to the people that want to use it, right? Because as of right now, it's literally been, for the most part, 5 boys making decisions in a vacuum, and no decisions empirically have been made. It's just, we have this poster child of a skate park that we've taken out just to give people an idea as to what this actually looks like in practicality. But the reality is that, nothing is decided yet. Everything's up in the air.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could say something on that.
Please.
This kind of thing happens all the time in these type of projects where you have a number of, I think it happens in pretty much every construction project, even like, if you could imagine someone that wants to build a attached 2-car garage, and they decide to themselves, I have X amount of dollars to build this project and I really want to build this. And then they go and they get it designed, and the architect says, this is going to cost 2x what if you have X, the architect says it's going to cost 2x, and you say, okay, and you go back to the drawing board, you work with them and you say, all right, well, we only have X. So what can we do to, whittle down the design scope? I think
Exactly.
I think what Anthony's saying is, we have in mind, based on a lot of, and I'm speaking a little out of turn here because Anthony's really been running with this for the last almost 4 years, but a lot of data and discussions and things that have caused us to believe and hone in on the size that we're sort of our target size of the park. But at the end of the day, if we have $200,000 in cash and we have another $150,000 in committed materials and labor, which brings us to $350,000, and that only allows us to build 0.6 of what we want to build.
Exactly.
We'll have to make some decisions, I think. So
Exactly. And
We
we
won't-
should be at that point.
Yeah.
Figure 6 months, 8 months tops. Right.
So-
This is a 2022 project.
And I want to believe that, Anthony, but you're
Me too. Me
14
too.
months into fundraising. I guess I don't know. I'm just wondering where the magic wand's going to come in for the remaining 110 in the next 4-ish months. But here, nor there,
So
how long do you think it's going to take to make a decision on what location is going to come out to be your preferred location, so that we as a park commission, as we move forward with Marshall Park, know whether or not you're definitely going in there?
So that should happen ideally, like I said, by like November, December.
Okay.
I'm expecting to have something concrete back from at least, 2 or 3 of these skate park designers, you figure within 2 or 3 months. So that puts us around
Pun
November.
intended. Pun intended.
Unintended. So I didn't even know I was making a
Concrete.
But yeah, no, we should be able to make a decision by year end. We don't want to
Karen-
string this along any longer than absolutely necessary.
Karen, how does that matches with our timeline? Because today we're reviewing a document for the request for bids, the RFP. And what's the timeline on that?
So we don't have a solid timeline on that. The dates that are in there are just placeholders. So I don't know how long it's gonna take. I don't know. And to be honest with you, it's like a 30-page doc. It's like some 20+ pages or something like that. I don't even know if anybody's had enough time to go through it for us.
34.
Yeah, for us to be even able to say, let's move forward with this. I think it's gonna take another meeting to do. So I think we're a bit out from that. Their timeline probably isn't very far off. November is 3 months, December is 4 months. So I don't think I don't think that's an issue. I guess I'd be saying to Anthony that we sort of need to get some decisions made, because what we do down there is going to be dependent, some of it at least is going to be dependent on what you're doing down there, if anything.
The other thing, hold on, just one thing. I'm gonna add something to what Karen's saying, Anthony, and then you might be able to address both things, because the other thing is, I know this commission prior to, my membership, had voted to support a certain size of park, and you're talking about a different size. So that needs to be, I think that conversation needs to happen at some point, and before we all go too far down this process. And I know you mentioned to have a conversation, community focused discussions and so forth. And I don't know what that entails. It sounds, it sounds like it could be a good process, but because this commission has taken a position on something, having to take a different position, it will require more conversations with us. That should happen before any decision for bids or so forth happens, because there's no point of going out to get bids or more information if we're not on the same page.
Sure. So when do we have that conversation again?
Oh, you can reach out to us and ask to be put on the agenda.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
Would the commission, if we determine that Marshall Park, this is an if, but let's just assume for the moment that we determine that Marshall Park's a great location for this thing, and we'd like to proceed putting it in Marshall Park, and we are interested in doing some community outreach, how would the commission see that working? Would the commission be driving those discussions and the skate park is participating, or would the skate park be driving those discussions and the commission be participating?
I say the skate park's driving them. It's, this ends up being your project going in with your funds being designed the way, we'd have obviously sort of a final say. I don't know if that's necessarily the right word of the design that went in, but I think we're all realistic in that anything that goes into any space is always, your confinement is what the space can accommodate. So I think that you guys, the skate park would be driving those discussions, and, we could certainly participate if you wanted. I'm not necessarily looking at this as a Parks Commission project. I'm looking at it as the Parks Commission saying we have a piece of land that we're willing to let you use. So-
One thing that I'll add to that is that just this year, we did do a survey about what people would like to see on Marshall Park, and we have the data on that. And I think we did have some answers that was skate park. So, we have done, because the skate park has not been definite, if you wanted to be there or not, skate park has been part of our conversations about Marshall Park. But that's as far as we could ever take, because we don't even know if that was a site that the skate park wanted to go. So
Yeah.
we have some information on that I think it's part of our due diligence with everything else. And I hear what Karen's saying about, I'm not sure how we could participate and the bandwidth if you would have to do it, but I would love to participate if there's something so I can learn more. So then when it comes time, I can participate and be helpful in making decisions.
You guys are going to know the right questions to ask
Right.
from a community outreach standpoint. Certainly, as Anna said, I'd certainly be a willing participant and willing to help. But I think you guys are going to ask the right questions.
That's fine. I
That
just
are going to
was
get
more-
the answers that you guys want or need.
And
rather, I guess.
one of the beautiful things about this is all of the skate park designers that we are working with, they actually run the focus groups. We know some of the right questions to ask, but definitely not all of them. And there are people that are far more experienced in this area that we're, obviously seeking guidance from.
Cool.
So, Greg, I have a question for you. I'm looking at the diagram that you sent. Ballpark, in terms of square footage on that area, do you have any number in mind? How many square feet approximately are in that area that we excavated around?
Yeah, if you give me 60 seconds, I'll draw a
Take it.
polygon. I'll draw a
right.
polygon here.
While Greg's
And-
using that 60 seconds, could I interject a couple things?
Yep.
The concern, backing up just a little bit, the concern about the time frame for what the skate park is doing in the next 3 months versus where the commission's going to be in the next 3 months. We don't have an RFQ yet. We're still in the formulation stage of that. That's another month. 30-day minimum advertising window, and then 30 days to interview and hire architect or whatever it is. So we're 90 days from starting to do anything substantive. So, those time frames aren't going to hurt either side.
Right.
Okay, also, one other
Good,
comment
thank
I'd like to make is that one of the last discussions we had about the park being at Marshall Park and the size of the park, I think if we go back and listen to that tape, the gist of the final conversation was that, yes, we had agreed only to a 5,000 square foot park, but that we were open to further discussion on a change in size for a couple of reasons. One of them was safety. I don't remember what the others were. So we did leave the window open, but we've never had that continuing discussion.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I concur with your assessment or recollection. So yeah, I definitely would like to continue the dialogue whenever you guys are available.
I
and interested in
don't
having that
mind putting
conversation.
it, I don't mind putting it on our next agenda item. I just want to list it specifically so that it's clear what the agenda item is and not, not under tonight, because I want to list it more specifically because we'd be changing a previous
No,
vote that we had made, so.
That's fine.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's fine.
There's there's like between 12 and 15,000 square feet of area between the existing edges of the traveled ways. And assuming that you'd want to stay north of, I'm just calling it north, it's actually west of the buried electrical cable, which would have the effect of being able to maintain the playground area. So if you sort of held the playground as a boundary, there's like 12 to 14,000 square feet, I think, in there.
Perfect.
in that range.
All right,
And does
thank-
that take you to the border of the actual, traveled road?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a real rough polygon based on a scanned image, Anthony. So that's why I'm saying it's 12 to
Yep.
14,000 square feet. But
And
it's,
I came up with the same, about the same footage as Greg did, so your civil engineering degree is helpful right now. but the non.
Good deal.
Great, Karen, thanks. Thanks for that.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, if you ever need a job.
Greg, you hiring?
stop-
Yeah, I was gonna say
stop-
hiring. Greg.
You ever need a
Well,
job, Karen, stop on
I
in.
don't, but I do have a civil engineer graduating in December.
Yeah, but
just,
you just,
you know.
you just invalidated his degree, so.
That is true. A degree we paid a lot of money for. So thank you so very much. All right. So our next item on our agenda is the Marshall Park Master Plan. Were you guys all able to open up that Google folder that I created today? I have to say, I actually like it. I've had this account for like, what, 8 hours now, and I think it's fantastic being able to get all of documents in one spot. So I am going to continue doing that for upcoming meetings, because then when I submit minutes, it's just grab and go. So I did put the RFP that came over from assistant town manager today into that folder. It's long. I have skimmed it briefly. I don't think I'm anywhere near being able to give a yay or a nay on it tonight because of how long it is. But if anybody has any feedback, if anybody's read it, has any feedback, if it's going in a direction you don't think it should be going in, chime in and yeah.
Karen, I haven't been able to get into it yet with the issues that I've got between my hotspots, and this computer is not allowing me to get into certain links. But I guess my question, just briefly, and if you're not sure, I'm wondering how many pages there are of actual scope of work in that document. Because we're going to have.
There's a sample contract at the end. There's, other information, bidders, submittals, what they need to. So the actual scope, I don't have a page for you, but there's a lot of other information in there as well.
16 pages is the kind of the write-up for the actual RFP, and then from 17 on is a sample. So half of it is a sample contract. The first half is the full write-up.
I just.
And
all of this-
the 5 or 6 pages of it is the grading score for the submission package.
I just caution that we make sure that this is honed down to what we need at this point, because $50,000 can be chewed up very quickly if you put too much into the RFQ, and then we're delayed another 60 days minimum if we get no bidders. So we need to be sure that we're asking for what we really need at this point versus soup to nuts. And without having read it, I don't have a feel either way.
So page 5 kind of highlights the primary activity zones within the park envelope would include parking. So there's an area in the front of the property with stationary pavilions that could be used for picnic areas, walking trails with access to the pond, small playground, unisex restrooms, improvements to the park's infrastructure, drainage, irrigation, fencing, lighting, utility connections, trees, pedestrian walkways, so forth. And then some additional notes about sufficient parking, long-term maintenance of park structures, and multi-use community uses. That's kind of from skimming it, that's what I saw as kind of the overall encompassing sort of deal, which raised one of my questions, because it seems like we're targeting, it says an area in the front of the property with stationary pavilions that can be used for picnic areas. So I feel like we're targeting an area about pavilions as opposed to just saying we want a pavilion.
Yeah, so that's some of the stuff that I was catching that was saying, I think this
There was a
is
reference to town sewer, which
right,
I don't think is.
we're not even in the sewer district. So
Yeah,
yeah. At this point, the Board of Health, this is our next agenda item, is willing to help out in that area. And I agree that giving specific locations of things isn't what I think we want. The other thing, they have it down as a 500 square foot skate park.
that's one of the reasons I asked the questions. I think it said 5. Does it say 500 or 5,000?
It says 500.
Oh, did it say 500?
Yeah.
Sorry, Greg, you're still listening. It's gonna be really, really small. But good news, you don't have to raise a lot of money.
Yeah, you probably have more than enough. You're want to break ground tomorrow?
It's gonna be in your driveway, Greg.
Yep, so I actually just made a note of those as well. I'm trying to see what else.
Aaron, if I can, when I
Yeah,
skimmed
go
through
ahead.
it, the biggest, I didn't get too much into the smaller details, but on the higher level stuff, the biggest thing I took away from it is there's 3 major tasks called out. The first being site analysis and schematic design. The second being design development services, which then obviously takes your schematic once it's been approved and you start design development. The third task is final design development and construction administration. So this RFP is basically taking it through all stages right up to preparing bid documents. So I don't know if that was quite what we were going for. I think 50,000 gets chewed up very quickly if that's what you're looking at. My own impression of what you were looking for is maybe definitely the first task, possibly the second task. I don't know if we're looking for someone to take it all the way through. If so, I think 50,000 will be a tall order to fill all that. So that's what I took out of it.
That was the realm, that was the reason for my comments earlier. I think task 3 is unrealistic, totally unrealistic. I think that's well beyond the $50,000, just getting through task 1 and 2. The Board of Selectmen are running into the same problem with School Street and had basically the same format. And, that's why I think we need to take a really strong look at this and pare it down to what we have in our minds as our expectations for step 1. I think the most important part is to get to a point where we've got a pretty good idea of what the park is going to look like, and what uses are staying, what new uses might be created. And then once we know that, then decide how we're going to either apply for grants or fund the construction document portion of it. I think if we got through all of task 1 and what sounds like pieces of task 2, we'd be in a position to apply for grants to fund the rest of the design and the build. Does that make sense, Rob?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so let me do this. I like that these videos are recorded because I can go back and refer assistant town manager to this meeting so they can hear the comments firsthand, but I'll go back and make these recommended adjustments to this. Unless somebody disagrees with them, I do agree that 50,000 is not going to cover all of this. If we keep it as Rob said, 3 tasks, I think it needs to be pared down to at least 2. I can go through it and grab some of the smaller details, which I think are important because, going out, putting this out there and having something say a 500 square foot skate park, it obviously wouldn't be accurate. So I will go through and grab some of those small things that I know are not accurate, and I can, I can certainly go back and bring it back to us. I'll ask her for a new copy and I'll just bring it back to us. And I can let you know when that's available to review. Does that sound realistic to everybody?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. If we can have
Perfect.
a second read on an amended RFQ for next meeting, would be great.
Yeah. All right, Greg, jump back on. All right, I had Greg jump back on for the next agenda item. So at our last meeting, because it was a posted meeting, we met with the Board of Health and we discussed septic over at Marshall. They made a motion that they approved to fund some initial, I don't know, what do you want to call it, Dave? Like investigative work down at Marshall. And Greg, Greg, did you do that piece yet to go? Is it your company that we're using for that?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you're gonna use us, but we prepared a proposal. So,
Okay. So can you, how does it work with like, so you know this process, even if you're not who we're hiring, I'm putting you on the spot to volunteer your information.
Yep.
How does it work? So the Board of Health is saying they have $100,000 that they would be willing to put towards, it's gonna be called a repair of the septic system that's currently at Marshall. How
Yep.
does it work? Can you give a general idea of how that works, like what the next steps would be?
Okay, sure. Just real briefly, the word repair in this, repair in quotes in the septic world is a very important word. It means that we do not have to document full compliance necessarily with Title V. So we can use some local upgrade approval type waivers that we may need given the site constraints that we have at Marshall relative to proximity to wetlands, presence of ledge on the site that I just discussed a couple minutes ago. So first and foremost, hearing the Board of Health classify it as a repair septic system is fantastic. So then the process is, first steps with any septic system is to go out and figure out where you have suitable soils to construct the system. So we would initiate, any engineer would initiate an application with the Neshoba Board of Health for a soil testing appointment. So Jim Gareffi would come out and we'd have a backhoe on site. Presumably Rob would be kind enough to donate a town backhoe to do some digging for us. We would have what's known as a licensed soil, Title V, licensed soil evaluator on site that would be able to classify the soils and to determine where a suitable area is for the system. So that's kind of step one. Step two is, step 1, 2, and 3 kind of occur very in rapid succession or almost concurrently. Step 2 is to determine the exact location of where the wetland limits are, because Title V, which is the code that governs septic systems in Massachusetts, has offset requirements. You have to be so far away from wetland resource areas. So we would determine where the wetlands are, and we would do a detailed topographic survey of the area. So that would be step 3. All that is under the guise of field work. Once we have that done, we can prepare a design plan which shows the proposed leaching area and septic tanks, and would probably generally show the proposed facility, the proposed bathhouse on the property. We prepare a septic plan, and we would send that into Neshoba Board of Health for review. If we're within 100 feet of a wetland area, we would also file a notice of intent or an RDA, request for determination of applicability, RDA, with the Conservation Commission, sort of concurrently with the filing with the Board of Health. With the ultimate goal of getting a septic permit from the Board of Health, so a sewage disposal system construction permit from the Board of Health, and an order of conditions or a negative determination, so an approval, in quotes, from the Conservation Commission. Once you have those things, you're ready to build. So then you can take that plan, the septic permit, the approval from the Conservation Commission, and you can send it out and get bids, solicit bids from contractors to build the project. Or you can put it into a master plan document, put it into a master planning type efforts that you're working on at large with the park, or however you want to do that. So that's the general process for doing a septic system approval.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne?
Yeah, so at what point does that sort of line of work coincide with a landscape architect planning? Because doesn't the landscape architect have to be citing the bathhouse, and
Yeah.
aren't there going to be like impacts of the leach field on the rest of the design? And
Yeah. So in a perfect world, if we had no constraints on the site, no soils constraints, no wetlands constraints, no other environmental factors, and we could put the septic system wherever we wanted, I would be happy to let a landscape architect drive that discussion. It makes our job a lot easier in a lot of ways. But in this case, I would recommend that to the commission that you do the work to figure out where the septic system will go, where the actual leaching system will go. Because I'm just knowing the site, we're probably gonna have all we can do to figure out where that's gonna go on site, to find soil in an area that's not too close to wetlands and things.
I guess that's what I'm asking is, does it, in your opinion, do you think that it probably is just like one spot on that property that makes sense for it to go?
Probably. We're gonna probably end up testing a few different areas to find the area where it can go. And then that's where it's gonna have to go. That's where the leaching system is gonna have to go, okay? But that's not necessarily where the bath facility needs to go, okay? So the bath facility can go anywhere in the park, and I'll pump it to the leaching system. We'll design that. You know, we'll design a system that will get the flow from wherever you want it in the park to wherever the leaching system needs to go. But I would definitely do the work to figure out where the leaching system needs to go so that the landscape architect can work around that, because that's not really going to be, in this case, I don't believe that's going to really be a negotiable thing. We're going to have to figure that out. But if you wanted to put the bathhouse, if the leaching area ended up being over near where the historical bathhouse was, I'm just, for instance, right? And you wanted to put the bathhouse over near where the concession stand is by the Little League field, we could do that. We'll just have to put a force main in and pump the septic system, the sewage up to it. And we do that all the time. That's not a problem from our end. If that made more sense from a master plan standpoint, but the leaching field portion would still have to go in that same location. So you wouldn't want to have the architect master planning a pavilion in the area of a picnic pavilion where we need to put the leaching system, right?
In the one area that's possible. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Does anybody have any questions for him?
Yeah, I just like to make one other comment. I don't know if Greg's aware of this or not. And this was part of the discussion at the Board of Health meeting or the joint meeting. And that is that we spent a few minutes on trying to, through all the brains that were in the room, recollect what the existing facility was and what flows that they were talking about approving for this new system. And just so Greg knows and the commission knows, the Board of Health came up with the flows for 3 toilets on each side and a sink on each side. So we should probably design the system up to that full capacity, but we do not have to build to that capacity right now.
And just to be clear on that, for the commission to know that it's our understanding what was there before was 2 toilet facilities and a shower. So the Board of Health basically said that shower could be converted to a toilet. So it would be, that's how we're coming up with the
Each,
number.
right?
So
Two and two.
Right.
Yeah. So the trouble with that, we will have an early discussion with Jim Greffey and perhaps the Board of Health to determine what the design flow should be. Because Title V doesn't really care how many toilets you have. It's kind of like bedrooms. Like, I think you're probably all familiar that your septic system at home, if you're on a septic system, is designed for a certain number of bedrooms. It doesn't care if you have a 4-bedroom 1-bath house or a 4-bedroom 5-bath house. It doesn't matter. It matters how many bedrooms. So it's the similar thing in this sphere. It's not going to be based so much on the number of toilets and the number of sinks we have. It's going to be based on the number of expected users of the system. So we're going to have to work with the Board of Health and Jim Greffey and Neshoba to pin that down. But I have that factored in my proposal. I have that factored in. We do that all the time. There's a lot of cases like this where it's not a cut and dry type situation where you can't look at Title V and say, okay, do the math very easily. So in those cases, we just work with the local Board of Health and figure out what it needs to be. And we'll do that. We'll have that conversation.
I'm going to add to Greg's comment in that that's probably the most important part of moving forward with this, because whatever the Board of Health determines the existing flow was to that system, we'll have to not go over that to be considered a repair.
Right.
Right.
So
Exactly.
if we go over, if we propose based on the number of users, and I forget, Greg, what the flows are for this type of facility. I was trying to pull up Title V while you were talking. But that's the key to a repair, is you can't, if you go more flow, it's then considered new, and then you've got to comply with Title V completely.
Right.
Fortunately, Jim was in the room for this discussion. It was the first time that I've seen everybody in one room, so that everybody who will be involved starts out on the same page. We may go in different directions from here, but everybody's on the same page at the moment.
Title V has 2 public park designations. So public park with toilet only and not showers is 5 gallons per day per person. Okay, that's how they do it. So you have to figure out how many people, which is very difficult in a park situation. We'll have to figure out how many people and then multiply times 5, right? And then if you had a bathhouse with showers, it would go up to 10 gallons per day, but that's not what we're gonna have. So to Rob's point, we're gonna have to go through and work with the Board of Health and come up with, and we do this from time to time. Like I said, we do this when we don't have a permitted flow in the record, which is the case that we have here. There's nothing in the Board of Health files that says this was designed for X number of gallons per day. We're just going to have to go to the Board of Health and work with them and come up with and agree to a number. That's part of our job to work through that. And we expect participation from your committee. You don't have to participate. Well, we certainly expect participation, and that would be kind of a group team effort to come up with that.
Okay. So Dave, I don't know if you agree. I don't know if we need first of all, does anybody have any concerns or that you want to throw out there now or anything like that before we even continue discussions on this? Okay. Yep.
So I'm trying to listen to learn a little bit. I don't have a lot of background on this, but is this $100,000 exclusively for planning, not necessarily executing?
No, so it
Okay.
is, and Dave, please correct me if I'm misspeaking on this. This was something that, these are funds that they have in an account that is currently not being utilized. It was for some grant program.
Right.
They've approached the state and said, what can we do with this money? And the state's response was, you can use it to better systems, a septic system within the town for your community. So this facility or Marshall Park is a great project for this. So it would include the design of like all the stuff that Greg just mentioned, and the design of the septic system and installation of this system, and possibly the pad, Dave.
Pad and or fixtures.
Fixtures, yeah, I
George-
said fixtures.
George and the Board of Health are as we move into that part of it, I think what they're looking to do is to maximize the use of the $104,000 and
Go ahead.
find a way to justify using that money up completely,
Okay.
even if it goes into fixtures and so on.
It
Okay.
wouldn't include the building though, Anna. They couldn't do the
Well,
building
but there
itself.
was a
structure.
comment made that if there was, depending on what the overall cost was, that, they may be able to consider that, but, they didn't give a definite answer on that.
But
So
the building of the septic system, the repair of the septic
yeah,
system would
yeah.
exist. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question.
we basically have to put the shell up, the building up. So, all right, so I don't think we need to make any votes on this evening. Is there anything that we need to vote on, Dave or Chris, that you're thinking of?
The only thought I had, and I talked with Heather Lemieux last night after the Board of Selectmen's meeting, After discussions between George Eman, the chair of the Board of Health, and Heather, it's been determined that the proper way to accept the proposal will be that Heather will sign as procurement officer and George Eman will sign as the entity that has control of the money.
Okay,
For our part, I think it would be a good idea that we
Sorry.
record a formal vote in an open meeting that we are on board with the, I don't know exactly how to word this, but that we are supportive of moving forward with at least this part of the project. And then the funding and everything will be taken care of by Heather and George.
okay. Do you want to make a motion to that effect and is that what you're looking to do? Sitting in
Yeah,
front of?
I think that's what I'd like to do, and that, you know, if we get it on the floor, at least it'll open it for further discussion if there is any, and.
How do you want to word it?
I've been running around all afternoon. I meant to have something written down formally.
Let me just open up my document here. So the Board of Health's motion was to,
They allocated $9,500.
allocated $9,500 for preliminary soil testing and preliminary engineering design. So support moving forward with Board of Health's proposal for preliminary soil testing.
Proposal and funding, or proposal, it doesn't matter. I mean, the funding is the funding. We don't have control over that. They do.
Second.
I'm just writing it down so I have it. Soil and engineering design. All right, so support moving forward with Board of Health's proposal of preliminary soil and engineering design at Marshall Park for septic system for repair of septic system. Does that sound correct? And Susanna, you want to second that?
I second that.
Is there any discussion on it? All right, we need to do a roll call vote on that. Susanna,
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. All right, so we're good there. Dave, you've been sort of spearheading this. Do you want to just let town manager know that's what we have done?
Sure will.
Okay, perfect.
Pass it on to both her and Board of Health, and they'll take it from there.
Great.
Just walk across the street, Dave.
Yeah, actually, the Midnight Oil is being burnt over there. I don't know if it's Heather or somebody.
Hey, Dave, when you go back to the Board of Health with this, can you let them know the findings that somebody was down at Marshall Park and it looks like the portable toilets have been removed? So we're really just waiting on the dumpsters to be removed?
Yep. I'll let them know.
Thanks. All right, so that is that. I have no idea where my agenda is. Anybody know the next topic? Dog policy.
Yes.
Am I correct in that? All right, so we had come up with a policy for allowing dogs in some areas leashed, in some areas unleashed. I then sent it off to town manager, who then forwarded on to town council. The takeaway from town manager's brief look at it was on the fines. And I'm trying to open that document. So, it's basically who's going to collect these fines was her note on that. I think we sort of thought the same thing, but we were leaving it in there to maybe have a little bite on something. let's see, where did she put that? Her comment was, is the fine in reference to the bylaw on animals? I would include a reference as to the authority to issue the fine. And then town council also provided feedback. He added a lot more. Not sure if anybody had the opportunity to read it, but it was changing it from a parks property dog policy to park properties dog regulations. He cites some general laws. He made some notes on, one of the areas, except as noted below, off-leash areas, make sure your dog is on leash and wearing a collar. Again, he did another thing with, in accordance with general law. He even went so far as to put what the general law was for fines, which is first offense $50, second offense $75, third offense $100. And the commission may also issue a no trespass order in accordance with another general law and may seek enforcement of such orders as may be appropriate. He had added that in a couple of places. And then he added at the end, these regulations are in addition to and do not supersede or replace the requirements of any otherwise applicable local bylaw or regulation, including his example is section 110-1 of the general bylaws entitled dog control. So those were his recommended changes. Yeah, Rob, you don't have to, you can just log off. Rob's leaving us.
Yeah. You
Hi,
guys
Rob.
don't need me at
Thanks,
this
Hi,
time
Rob.
anymore.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Too. Oh, there's the dog. Is he on leash?
She is not on leash right now.
You have her under control, because if not, it's.
She is
a
under my
$75.
control. I'm gonna put her back down and go play with the other dog.
Is that cute little puppy going anywhere next week?
That's the plan.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I got a 12-year-old puppy walker.
There you go.
All right, so I don't know how you guys want to approach this. If we want to, if you've had enough time to look at it and we want to consider this our second reading this evening, or what you want to do. If there's something that you don't agree with, something that you want added.
It's a valid question though, like what does disciplining, sorry, I have a really loud cat in the room. Can you hear that? He's unleashed. And the like, what does it actually look like if someone is breaking that dog law? Does that mean that a coach of like the baseball team has to email or call a park commissioner on the spot and get a name and a number, and like what does this look like?
Well, I would think it would be similar. I think it's similar to what we have going on right now, even with our town bylaw of, our restraint law, that if there's an issue, you report it to, either the governing body, in this case, it would be us, or, I suppose they could call the local police department if they were that concerned.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, like, I think when people have, well, if there's a dog running around, more than just breaking the law, there is a question of safety, breaking the regulations of the park. For me, there's always a question of safety. I don't know how friendly your dog is. I love dogs, but, is there a way that we can ask that the police department or maybe the animal officer to be in control of that? Because the animal control officer is the one who issues fines and everything related to pets and dogs and kennel and everything. And they are under the supervision of the police department. So making it a separate body just makes it convoluted. And if all we are doing is trying to get someone's phone number to then someone go out, communicate with them, we're not at the time solving the problem, which is, I think, if they're breaking a regulation, the police should be able to come to the park and say, I need you to leash your dog or leave. And I didn't see that part.
So
Or how does that get played?
Is what I'm hearing, the question really is, who's going to respond should somebody make a complaint?
Yeah.
Who's going to respond if somebody makes an immediate complaint? Let me go back to town manager of that. My guess would be, who responds when, if somebody's over at the school buildings being destructive. I would say it's the police that are responding to that. So let me, I'll verify that. I'm happy to go back and verify that.
Because more than the fines is, for me, is remediating the issue that's happening at the time.
Yeah, I just don't want it to end up being a totally empty law that nobody, there's no real, repercussion if someone isn't obeying the rules.
I mean, I think
And-
the ultimate change in this, really, we're putting this in place, but I mean, I think ultimately if people aren't abiding by this, then the change is going to come that there's not going to be dogs allowed in parks. I mean, that's ultimately the threat. If not following this procedure, I think that's ultimately where we end up down the line, and with if people can't follow these rules. But I guess that's the one thing I like the policy we have written. I think it's well written. I like the additions that town council made. But that is the one underlying question: is who is the one that administers those fees?
And I
Fines,
think,
rather.
and the animal control officer can issue fines as regards to dogs. So it makes sense that it goes there, that person. And also, it seems that we are creating a policy that ultimately, I think it lies with the animal control officer and the police, because they can issue citations.
Okay.
There has to be an instantaneous response by
Right, and
them.
it's-
So they have
and
to
the
they have to embrace this as well. It has to be in that instantaneous sort of response that if a citizen calls, says, "Hey, there's a dog off leash at Marshall Park at the baseball game,"
Right.
then they need to come down and either,
So I'll go back to, I can certainly go back to town manager and to council. Does anybody not agree with any of the recommended changes from town council? Okay, so let me see if I can get the answers to those questions, and then I can bring it to our next meeting.
Can we maybe make the suggestion, and Suzanne also raised her hand. Can we all, if we are all in agreement, can we also make the suggestion that, some of the enforcement and the issuing of the fee should fall under the animal control officer and the police department? Because they are one unit.
Yeah, no, I mean, that would be, I don't see any other group that would be able to do that. It's not like we don't have a rec director or even a DPW that's staffed 24 hours a day. So whoever's gonna call and make the complaint would most likely call the police. So I think that, at least to me, is a given. One example that comes to mind on this, and we have a policy in place that says the parks close at dusk. So if there was a complaint coming in over at, say,
I'll say
Wallace Park
Wayland.
Courts. No, I'm trying to think of what places are typically used at night. And a lot of times it's the basketball court, because they can shine their lights on the court. If a complaint came in over there, then, they'd call the police. And I know that when we passed that policy saying the park's closed at dusk, I emailed over to, then it was Chief Marino to say, this is the policy that we've just put in place. If you get any complaints over there, there's your justification to ask those people to leave. But I would really be saying the same thing to town manager that,
Yeah, and issuing the fees, animal control officer does issue fees. So I think it makes sense to fall under her.
Can we just make a motion to approve the verbiage that's in place now, contingent upon the dog officer and the police feeling like it's okay? Or-
Do we need to add a statement in here, though, about complaints should, issues, issues that come up not abiding by this rule should be referred to
so
the
that's.
police
that would be
department
my-
kind of deal? That
that's
would be
my
the statement I think we'd have to
hesitation.
include.
That's my hesitation, Susanna, that, if we approve something that we may be changing it,
Bother. Okay,
I like what we have so far. I think it's great. I think we're gonna need a sentence as to, I think, who is issuing the fines and who are the complaints made to. But I think everything that's in here it's nice to have actually some general laws in place that actually do say we could issue, that it is a finable sort of deal, as opposed to the empty threat we initially had.
Right.
One other real quick comment, just because I checked on it last night. That comment at the end about this policy that will not conflict or override any other bylaws, or I don't exactly know how it's worded. But I asked Adam Costa last night as he was leaving the meeting to verify to me that the policy as we have it written for the unleashed area doesn't conflict with the constraint policy. And he read it through right there himself, and he says, no, there's enough open interpretation here, so he saw no conflict between the two.
Okay. Dave, Anna and I are laughing at you right now because both of us would have opened up our homes to you, so you didn't
And
have.
I'm literally down the street.
yeah, I can almost see you.
Honest
Except for
to
the
your
fact that
credit,
the mosquitoes came out about a half hour ago. This is great. It's beautiful out here.
And the mosquitoes are gray. Okay.
and you know, and I'm like, because all three of them are in the, like, you're all right there.
All right here.
You know,
Throw a rock at anybody's house.
it's like I did the TCP meeting in Greg's office because I was sitting in front of Ritter, and he came on and he says, Dave, I'm across the street.
Oh, good grief.
But hey, when we get 5G along with our street lights, we'll be able to do this all over town.
That is
No.
true.
All right, now let's not go there. Okay.
All right.
Are we all
So,
set for this?
yep, I will go back and get some information on those questions / concerns. So that topic is done. The next thing is basic plants at Parks property. So, yeah, what do you guys, Dave, this was, I think, an agenda item of yours from a long time ago.
What was it? I was just
Rob mentioned the poison ivy. That's getting treated, or he's looking into getting that treated.
I actually
Um,
think it was Susanna.
Yeah, sorry, am I on here? I've been, I haven't followed up on that. I think it was
Okay.
I was going to look into the weeds in the pond. It was the, I forget the name of the one that's there. It's not the lily pads, it's the,
It's the one underground.
one. Yeah, it's a spiral one. It's called something wart. I forget what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah. I have not
So-
done that.
I might invite Susanna over to go for a walk around the pond with me.
Yeah.
Oh, we can go in the boat and go
Okay,
see the owl.
okay, deal.
Right.
Suzanne,
Hornwort? Is it hornwort?
Fanwort.
Fanwort, that's it,
Fanwort.
fanwort.
The owl is a great horned owl, if anyone's
Oh.
interested.
Very cool.
I would like to see it, so I will come.
That
on
is a
over.
mom and a young one, and
That's-
probably like a teenager.
What a treat.
Dave, what were you gonna say?
I don't think I was, except
Okay.
just coming up with the name of the plant in the water there.
Okay, so I actually, believe it or not, have some strong opinions on this one. I think that our beach, the water area, is at a point that it needs to be addressed. I think that there's some significant weed growth in the water that needs to be addressed, and we have discussed this previously, not with Rob, but with our previous DPW director, and I thought we were getting some momentum on it, and then for whatever reason, we didn't. I personally think that we should ask Rob, give him some areas that are concerning to us and ask him to come up with a plan as to how those are going to be addressed. I don't need to tell him how the plan needs to be executed, but I would like to know that there is a plan. And for me, that would be the town beach, maybe some of the, maybe something over at Marshall. poison ivy, but I want to make sure that it's being limited to the areas that are actively being used and that we're not excessively using any sort of chemical to try to remove more than we need to use. You know, I don't want to destroy our environment because we're trying to get rid of, you know, poison ivy in an area that's not being used.
Right, if we're talking about invasive non-natives, like we were, that meeting, poison ivy is totally native.
Yeah.
So it's not something you want around the playgrounds or the ball fields, but we shouldn't be going into the forest to eradicate it or anything.
What he's going after right now is a stretch over along the side of the track between the basketball court and the track itself, but up on the high side along the track. It's grown right up to the edge of the granite on the track for about 60 or 70 feet. So anybody walking that edge or walking a dog brushes through those leaves, then you get the oil on their fur, so on and so forth. So it's a relatively small area that's going to get sprayed.
I kind of agree with Karen that well, Karen, you started by saying, you know, you don't care what the plan is, but I kind of care about what the plan is a little bit. And then you said, you know, you shouldn't destroy our environment. Marshall Pond is a concern. If we like that we have a Marshall Pond, that we ski in the winter, and it's beautiful. There's so much wildlife at the end of that pond. It's amazing. I love when there are people out there. That is a concern for wildlife based on the overgrowth of some of the plants there. It's just not balanced anymore. So I think lily pads is also a native, right, Susanna?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't. I don't.
Oh,
Those ones
yeah.
are taking over so aggressively. I'm not sure.
right. Well, I think it's just it's the overuse of, overuse of fertilizers for lawns is a big thing. And it has, like, I've seen pictures from my neighbors from the past almost 3 decades, and the past 15 years, the pond has gone downhill. So I don't know. So I think it would be a good request to ask Rob to come up with a plan on how to address X, Y, and Z. And we ask him to execute that plan once on our approval. Because he might have the budget, like, we think we don't have a budget, but there is a budget that goes to DPW that he may be able to use towards some of our requests.
No, I absolutely, that I do. This is, to me, isn't an issue of where we're going to find funding for it. It should come under the maintenance of it. And when I say that I don't care about what the plan is, what I mean is, I don't necessarily need to know all the nitty gritty details of how we're going to, what days we're going to do it, how often it's going to be done. If, I don't need to know all of that stuff. I just want to know that there's a plan in place and some of the basics of that plan. And maybe that's, for example, the town beach, are we pulling weeds or are we somehow treating them? Are we, what are we doing? Poison ivy, for example, if that's an invasive, although it's a native invasive, if that's an invasive that they decide to tackle, are they bringing in goats or are they going to spray it down?
Let's go for goats. So I have an idea, because I want us to cover more items in this agenda, in our agenda tonight. And I don't know if I can talk much more past 9 o'clock. How about we make a motion that we are requesting the DPW director to address invasive plants, native and non-native, because if they're overgrown to the point of lily pads in a pond, and we say 3 areas of concerns, and we send it to the DPW director to come up with a plan and of treatment, a plan and a timeline for treating those areas of concern of ours.
Hold on.
And I think that way, we're signaling Rob that we have these concerns and
Yep.
what are his plans and what's his timeline? Similar to the Beaver, which, surprise, surprise, they're back. So,
I'll hold my thoughts on that
Is that a
one.
motion or is?
well, I just want to know if we are in a place that a motion like that will be helpful.
We are in
I
a
think,
place.
I think so.
okay. All right, do you want to
So-
phrase it because you wrote a note, you wrote the notes?
Yeah, chill. Okay, so this would be a motion to request that the DPW come up with a plan and timeline to address native and non-native plants at the following locations. Marshall Ponds,
Town Beach,
Town Beach,
do we have one more?
should I say Town Beach or Town Beach Water?
Well, Town Beach Water. then.
And we could just say, oh, general.
Well, let's be
public
specific, or
space. Well, I mean,
if we don't have specific, I would say leave it to two.
What about Marshall Park proper, not just the pond?
Right.
Right, do we have a specific area or a specific invasive that we are thinking?
well, we've got poison ivy around the track.
Okay, so we can say poison ivy around the track.
And there's bittersweet on the old basketball court fence, and there's some of that awful American bamboo stuff coming in. It's a lot of stuff.
Okay, well.
The
but
fence is,
it-
the fence needs a lot of work, but I think
But-
that's a whole nother,
I think, whatever, I'm just saying, let's give him specifics to address. It can be 5 different things on Marshall Park proper, but let's just be specific so that we're not treating poison ivy in the middle of.
I think he's already dealing with the poison. He's already acknowledged he's dealing with the poison ivy, so I'm not sure we need to even
Well, Dave
include
said
that?
that
at this point.
Dave said that he's doing the poison ivy not around the track, in a different location.
No, he's doing the poison
Oh,
ivy
he's
around the
doing it
track,
around the track.
not anywhere else. Because that
Oh, okay.
poison ivy goes all the way down off the track. It goes all the way down the sort of trail that goes down to the basketball court and is growing into the basketball court. Like when I was down there cleaning that out this summer, in the spring, the poison ivy is growing into that
Okay.
basketball court, but it's not it's not at a point that it's a serviceable basketball court where I think there's some kind of it appears there's some low key skateboarding going on down there, and so forth, but
Okay, so the 2 things that Susanna mentioned, since he's dealing with the poison ivy, you raised your eyebrows, Susanna.
Oh, no, I'm listening, sorry.
Okay. So the 3 things would be Marshall Pond, Town Beach Water, and the two specific things that Susanna mentioned on the park.
Right, and I'm happy to hear that he just is gonna continuously be cutting the bittersweet down. I don't care if, I don't need them to be coming in there with glyphosate or anything. Just keep it from
What
taking
do you
over.
want the third item to be?
Marshall Park bittersweet.
Okay.
we haven't
Alright.
heard about poison ivy in any other properties, right? I don't think there's.
I personally think the beach ought to be pulled out of this request and put it on as separate, all by itself and a high priority.
We
Extra
can
high
s-
priority.
Well, maybe we can just say highest priority for the town beach, and then put a second priority and third priority, so that kind of will help him come up with a timeline.
Because when we invite the beach director in for her comments for this past season, that's going to be one of her comments that needs to be dealt with because it's getting worse every year.
Okay, so maybe the town beach's highest priority?
Yep.
The one that will get done sooner, and then the second one would be
The pond.
the pond, and the
Okay,
third
so-
one would be,
I would normally agree with you, Dave, but and I do agree with you that the town beaches should be a priority. I guess I'm also looking at it. I think doing anything in the water is going to require approval from conservation. And if he's gonna go seek approval for one body of water, he might as well do both of them at the same time. Because my guess is that probably very similar, although there's lily pads over at Marshall, I know that. I'm gonna guess some of the weeds are gonna be the same in the water and some of the way that they're treated. Susanna, I would assume that they'd be treated in similar ways.
I believe so. It's the little that I know about how they have treated fan ward over at Hickory Hills is a combination of chemical treatment and physically removing it. But I think it's just it's a management thing because it doesn't go away.
The big difference, though, is that the town beach is only a very small piece of Whalum Lake, whereas Marshall Pond, you're talking about the whole pond. We don't have jurisdiction over that entire lake, so it's you know, it's going to be a limited number of avenues that we can use to control those weeds off of the beach, off of the town beach area.
So do you want me to list all three of these three things in one, or do you want me to break out town beach?
I know, Dave, we can go on a vote, but I think if I'm getting a request to take care of these things, getting one piece of information, please take care of all these things, these are a higher priority, it's much easier to manage than getting different requests. Like, it's not going to be able to prioritize anymore. And Susanna has something to say.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking more clearly, why don't we just have the two water requests together instead of having Marshall Park proper in there too?
But that one, you said it was easy, so just
It is
bring
easy.
it.
It is easy, and it should just kind of be part of.
Right,
what's
so
moving
let's
anyway.
just, I think we should just leave it because, you know, like, I honestly, like, and I think Rob knows a lot more than I do. But for me, when I'm looking around and I see green, I don't know what's invasive or not. And we just might be bringing it to his attention and he go, okay, I can easily take care of that.
Where's the bittersweet down at Marshall, Susanna?
It is on the Chestnut side. It's if you're walking under those pine trees to the left, it's along that whole side, that where you would go down to the basketball court. That whole fence is bittersweet.
Susanna, along the stone wall, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not.
So-
I haven't-
I think
The-
ultimately that's, I mean, the bittersweet, I think is going to have to be cut back and whatever needs to happen with it. So we don't have that issue going forward if we put something else in there long-term. But I mean, ultimately that fence is probably going to have to come down and
Right.
all that kind of deal.
I mean, it's definitely gonna get it.
There's so much growing through that fence, the entire circumference of that, there's so much growing through or falling on top of that whole fence.
It's probably a lot more than just bittersweet.
Oh yeah. There's limbs that are leaning on it and it's caved in and
I think I'm leaning towards Susanna's suggestion of just dealing with the water
the water.
right now.
I would agree.
And,
Separate ways of dealing with things, like, you know, the weed whacker versus a much more, whatever,
Okay.
the water stuff is overwhelming.
All right, so tell me if this motion reads the way you guys want. Request the DPW come up with a plan and timeline to address native and non-native plants at the following locations: Marshall Pond and Town Beach Water.
Good.
All right, so
Should we, hold on, should we put a timeline on when we expect to hear the timeline back? We request that this issue to be addressed within the next 45 days. We request that this request to be addressed on the next 60 days.
request to be addressed, meaning you want
Request for the
come
plan
up
to
with a
be,
plan?
yeah. We request that the plan to be developed and put in motion within 45 days, 60
Those-
days. I'm
So,
just,
Tough not knowing what's on his plate, you
Yeah.
know, so I'm wondering if we say, can we get a timeline?
well, you
on it.
know,
Do we request a timeline on the plan by our next meeting? So then we know
right.
when that's going to be addressed. So that gives them an opportunity that I think it's going to be important, just in terms of good working relationship and so we're to acknowledge that there's a lot on his plate.
No, I
um,
hear that. I
And
just
and
don't
not
wanna,
give them a timeline saying we need something in 60 days. But rather at the next meeting, can we have an idea of what the
so,
timeline's going to be to develop a plan and address?
so
the
I
issues.
agree with you, but just as we put a request to remove those light posts, you know, in the spring, and this is a storm away from 2 poles to fall on the ground. And he has other priorities. You know, Park is a priority. He's the custodian of our parks. And I do believe that we need to make that a priority for him. Because if we don't, if we're not being disrespectful, we are giving a reasonable time frame. But I think it is important to say, this is important, it should be a priority within your, and we're literally saying, come up with a plan with 60 days. Don't necessarily address it with 60 days. But when we don't put a timeline, even to get us a response, I mean, today was and I like Rob, he's doing a great job. It's not about that. It's just about, like you said, Chris, a working relationship. A working relationship needs to be that we put a request, we talk, and we actually get some concrete answers. Versus right now, that's not a priority. I don't think that's necessarily a working relationship. So if we say 60 days to come up with a plan, and he can come back to us and say, I need more than 60 days to come up with a plan, then you say, okay, how long do you need to come up with a plan? We're not saying execute.
All right.
But that's,
So I'm thinking our October meeting, that would be just about 60 days, I would say, by our October meeting, just so that if we do get somebody in for a temporary beach director, they may have some, not beach director,
Rec director.
rec director, they may have some experience or some knowledge to share or contacts that they can reach out to. I mean, I know the work falls back to DPW, but that's what
I think that's great. Yeah. Do we have an exact date of our October meeting?
We do, but then if we change it, we are.
Well, we can just put it that date.
October 27th.
Okay. And all we're saying is come up with a plan by that time.
I
And
think
if
that
he's,
there's no harm in being a squeaky wheel. When we're, when everyone's busy, you're gonna pay attention to the person that keeps bugging you about stuff first. So if we want something done, it might not hurt to put them on a timeline.
That's fine with me. So October 27th.
Yes.
All right, so who's motioning this, by the way?
I can motion if you read it because you wrote it so well. I
So-
motion to,
Request that the DPW come up with plan and timeline to address native and non-native plants at the following locations: Marshall Pond and Town Beach Water, by our October 27, 2021 meeting. By October 27, 2021.
that's my motion.
Second,
Susanna seconded. Thank you. All right, any discussion before we vote? Dave, are you still there?
Yeah.
Someone behind him.
Yeah, that's why I'm sort of asking.
Yeah,
I was debating on driving down the street and then jump.
Yeah,
I like, what if people driving by him going, ooh, what is he doing? He's in a park meeting. All right, quick roll call vote. Susanna,
I
Anna, Chris,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
And an aye from myself. Great, we are done with that one. And do we have anything else?
Yeah, we do.
Donation of picnic table.
Oh, yes. So we have had a donation of a picnic table to be put over at Marshall Park. It's just a basic, simple wooden picnic table. Yeah, so that's what it is. Just the generosity.
Marshall Park or Marshall Pond?
Marshall Pond, I'm sorry, Marshall Pond.
We're getting close to Karen's expiration time as well.
Yeah,
who donated it?
it's an anonymous donation.
Okay. Does it need transportation?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. So
Rob's on board.
I would think so. To be honest with you, I didn't run it by him.
What did you ask, Dave?
If
I
DPW,
asked if Rob was aware and on board with it.
It's a table. Can we just,
I think
you
we've
know,
had that discussion before, actually.
yeah, let's
I
just,
think we've already agreed to put a picnic table there in the past.
yeah.
Well, we're supposed to be working together, so I have no problem with putting the table there, but he should be informed so that if a townsperson comes to him and says, where did this table come from? Or why is it there? Or whatever, he isn't sitting there saying, what table?
Oh, I would.
We
challenge
we
him.
wouldn't, we didn't say we wouldn't communicate with him.
Dave, do you see, we're walking down the street now at the picnic table. Do you see us? We're bringing it to
The
you.
video camera go running so I can post it on YouTube.
Exactly. So it's,
mean, what-
again, it's just, it's a simple wooden picnic table. You know, if it, in the future, and, you know, another table once, you know, goes in there, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So I think this is a great gift to the Marshall Pond Park area. And I think we get some good usage out of it from the folks, especially the folks that live over there, and maybe the, you know, folks from the senior center, when they're out for a walk, will notice that it's there and go eat their lunch. So I think it's a great idea.
Is there a motion?
Is there a thought about winter time? If those need to be, if we would remove a picnic table in the winter to preserve it more, or do we need to treat the picnic table to preserve it more? Stain, paint, whatever. I don't
I
know.
think it's stained.
You think it's stained right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, you know, talk to Rob. It's one of those things where, you know, if it gets moved out, great. But I mean, a lot of people leave their wooden picnic tables out year round.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily meant to last forever. It would
Right.
be, you know,
And it could serve a purpose in the winter time too, I suppose.
well, yeah, because you've got skating going on down there now with, even with little blue benches.
Yep, we get little, those
Oh,
need some repair.
So, do I have a motion to accept the picnic table as a gift?
I will motion to accept the picnic table as a gift
Thank you.
and inform Rob that it's there.
It would be, I will inform Rob.
And I second that.
All right. So just so everyone's aware of how this is going to work, we're motioning to accept the picnic table as a gift. It then has to go to, and I actually have to let town manager know, and the the select board actually makes the final acceptance of this gift. It's
Picnic table.
the picnic table. It's the weirdest process, but that's what I've been told, like,
Okay.
so we're just gonna go with it. Any more discussion before we do a roll call vote? All right, Susanna,
Aye.
Anna,
I,
Chris,
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And an aye from myself. Great. Who's keeping track of the agenda? Because I don't know what's next.
Other business.
I don't think we had any.
The only other thing I'd like to bring up is when are we going to move forward with the process of getting Fitzgerald designation switched over to care and custody of parks?
So that's a darn good question, and it's actually something I was going to bring up in this section of board comment. I'm interested to see, I think I know the process, not 100% sure I know the process. I think that we need to have a conversation with Conservation Commission, be where it is currently in their care and control. I'm not sure it's something that we would want to just suddenly put out there at town meeting. Does that sound right?
I was under the impression that the chair of conservation knows that it's not in their care and custody legally. I thought it was, I thought open space came up with it as general municipal, that it was never given to, because we can't take, if it is indeed under conservation, we can't take it. The legislature would have to change, make that change. So if they don't have control over it, then it's got to be general municipal.
So I thought it was if that piece of property was purchased as a piece of conservation, if that, depending on how that was purchased, it was purchased with a grant money from the state that stipulated it had to stay in the care and custody of conservation, that's when we couldn't move it out. But that if it was, in this case, I think it was, might have been taken by the town via tax title. I should have refreshed my memory before tonight. Because there's another piece of property that I think that they had discussed, and I think it might have been Dave, you had brought it to my attention, the strip of land that's in the care and custody of conservation in front of, on the Whalum Lakefront along the fence.
Right,
Right?
right.
When's the deadline for special town meeting articles?
February 20,
September 28th.
yep, September 28th. Right.
Really?
Yeah.
All right,
I don't recollect any deed reference to,
no, I don't think there is one, and I've pulled it.
yeah, if there's no deed reference, then they don't legally have care and custody of it. It's general municipal. If it says town of Lunenburg.
Yeah, but even
So it may not be on the deed. What I've learned is may not be on the deed, but there might be, because the deed wasn't registered or recorded that way, but there might be the case that there were things related to it, to the transferring of the land that had, basically the deed may not have captured everything that needed to capture. That I
No.
learned.
It's been
Okay.
researched from a number of directions, so we should be able to get it pinned down very quickly. And I think the chair of conservation is probably the one that has the most up-to-date knowledge on it. And I kind of thought, if it's not that property, it's a piece of abutting it that was taken as tax title many years ago.
I will have to go back in my emails and look, because I had some conversations with Brandon Kibbe about this, because at one point the thought was that it was the way it was deeded and the way it was purchased was forcing it into conservation and to remain in conservation. But then I remember doing some research and going back to him and saying, I don't believe that's the case, because here's what I found. Let me do this. So Bob Pease is the chair of conservation. He's also on open space. At least I think he's still the open space rep. Let me have a conversation with him. And then let me talk. Does anybody know when the next town council hours are?
I don't think they've been announced yet, or if they
They
have.
had August, the last email was August hours, which
Okay.
is the 23rd.
And but there was no September hours?
I
listed
haven't
yet?
seen an email yet.
All right, let me see what I can get for information in terms of a timeline, because I'm assuming it's gonna have to be researched. And it may have to be researched by people other than us, just to make sure that there's nothing else there. Let me see what I can get out of town manager and town council to see what has to be done, other than us just going to town meeting and saying we want to move this. If the deadline for warrant articles for the meeting is September 28th, if we want to try to make it for special town meeting, it needs to be done fairly quickly. What I can say is if we don't meet that deadline, I don't think it would be hurtful to keep this on I don't think we should postpone addressing it. I think we should keep it, get all the legwork done now, and literally have the warrant article ready to go to be submitted to the select board well in advance of the deadline for the spring town meeting.
I agree with that.
Just to
Yeah.
plant the seed long-term. And I'm not doing this with the proper research behind it yet. But let's have a conversation about Fitzgerald Field being converted to another use sometime in the near future. My impression is that, as we've been talking about for a long time, the dwindling numbers for Little League don't necessarily justify the number of fields we're supporting. And if that's the case, and Fitzgerald Field, from my understanding, has had very little use this summer, that to me makes them, and it needs work. That's the place that makes the most sense to me to convert to rectangular fields and do it right.
Yeah, it's not, it's, Yes, for some field space, it would be usable. It wouldn't be Fitzgerald, I don't believe, and I did the measurements a few years back, are big enough for like a regulation size soccer field. But yeah, we can certainly, we can
It can
absolutely,
be for 45-year-old and up soccer field.
yeah.
Like I can see Chris and I, you know,
I don't know. We play the regulation fields.
ah,
We play the regulation
But
front field
why?
because we
They
get numbers. We
play
get
20v20, but they play regulation.
no, man. We're like 11v11.
They don't have to run as far. So, all right. So I will, I guess my sort of takeaway or what's in my head right now is that if I go back to town council and I pull up all the old information that I found and we're able to confirm the way this piece of land ended up in the care and custody of, I shouldn't even say care and custody, in custody of the Conservation Commission, and it doesn't need much more legwork, and it's just a matter of writing I say simple article for the warrant, then you'll get an email from me saying, hey, let's have a quick meeting, by mid-September, so we can discuss the wording of a warrant article, and if we want to move forward, putting it in. And if it's something that is going to take some more legwork, then I will put it on our next agenda item. I'll keep it on our agenda for September, October, and then we'll have everything, all of our ducks in a row to move forward in the spring for Springtown meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
Can somebody hold me to that? I'm talking a lot of great game tonight, but I'm afraid I'm gonna forget it all. So, all right, I have our next meeting. First of all, does anybody have any public or board comment before we move to the next part? All right, I have our next meeting scheduled for the 29th of September. I like this 7 o'clock start time. Does that work for everybody else?
Yes.
I mean,
Couple agenda items that we'd still have on here are going to be the Marshall Master Plan. Do we want to put the skate park square footage?
well, they need to come to us, like.
I think we add it. Just put it on. I mean,
Just as we do it the next.
let's just expedite it and put it on there.
I got the text message already asking for that, so
Yeah.
they have officially asked. Square footage, do we want to invite, since it's still going to be fresh in her mind, do we want to invite the beach director for a quick update on how the beach went?
Sure.
Being mindful, I'm going to put her at the very beginning. I'm not going to make her wait. I don't care if we have to stop what we're doing. Being mindful of the fact that she is off the clock at that point. So if she comes to us, it's going to be on a voluntary basis. And I want to super respect her time that evening. So I will ask her.
Another suggestion is if the RAC director is on staff, to invite him or her.
Yep,
They,
yep,
We'll have a final review of the dog policy at that point.
yep. And I had one other thing that I was gonna, what do we want to call this? For the Fitzgerald Field.
is that the police, Dave?
Oh, there's cars driving around.
Honestly, maybe we should just meet outside town hall. We could do it in person. It's gonna be videotaped, we can all just sit out there.
I have a patio.
Patio.
All right, so I think that's more than
Go look
enough.
outside. So that's what Dave is now.
Oh, the other thing, so I hate, so I'm gonna aim for this for October then, because I think September's pretty booked. I'd like the Little League to come in and have some discussions with us. The good, bad, ugly, have DPW director there, get everybody on the same page. They are the prime users. Like to get more information on them, what their numbers are looking like, so that we can start making some plans for these fields. But I'll try to put them in, I'll invite them to the October meeting.
When do we I mean, I get like we're doing a, you know, this request for proposal at Marshall Park and so when do we start to involve potentially a school committee or something like that with if the discussion becomes where ball fields are and so forth, obviously that's something to tie people in. Should that be on anyone else's radar so that they're having kind of a vague discussion? And that,
Well, why don't I
Okay.
I'll just send a reminder email to the school department saying, this is what we are discussing. And since you have an interest in that field down there, you should probably follow along and give input and give us some information on what your ultimate goal, if there is one, for the location of your programs, because I haven't been following them. For all I know, they could have voted at their last meeting to support a different location or put in a field. I have no idea.
speaking of school, did we get an update on their policy?
I didn't. I didn't.
That was taking place, I think.
Yeah, it was early in
Now?
August. I didn't,
Yeah.
their policy committee met. I wasn't able to go, so I have no idea what they
They
decided.
invite us?
I got an email from Rob, saying that the meeting was happening, but you know, it came in.
Rob, DPW, Rob?
DPW director, he sent an email, he might have sent it to just me saying that this meeting was happening. I may not have caught that it only came to me. And it was during a week that I was away, so I didn't go to it. And the gist of it was, you know, they're meeting on this day. They don't allow public comment during the discussion. You'd have to wait to the end. And that's really was my takeaway from it. And I didn't go. So I can see what I can find for an update, but that needs to be put on the agenda as well to figure out any agreement for, because nothing will be done before the spring, even if they magically decided to put in a new field. I don't think it would be playable in the spring. So they're gonna need to come back to Marshall Park. And we need to.
Is that even part of their discussion? To build another field?
I have no idea what they're doing because I'm not following along.
Because I thought it was just.
I
a
only bring it
policy.
up just from the standpoint of surprise. We just did our, you know, here's a plan and there's no ball field in Marshall Park.
Oh.
Like just to, at some point we should probably start that dialogue at least. There, I guess potentially is that possibility.
There is a discussion, and I just don't want Anna to think that I'm pulling something out of left field. At one point years ago, there was a discussion that there was space over at the fields, at the schools for some sort of field. I don't remember if it was softball or baseball or, but I'm not following it. So I have no idea what direction they're going in, if any, with anything. So.
This would be a good thing for an interim rec director to be communicating with the athletic director over there.
So, all right. Is this all on our agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else? I see Dave's hand.
Yep, if I get my microphone to work again. Just so you know, the policy committee of the school department had I believe it was a first reading on the policy changes relative to rec department programming, but to tell you the truth, I couldn't follow it very well. They were all wearing masks and the audio was horrible. They were in the auditorium.
Okay.
So they already had the first reading. Okay, I'm gonna email the chair and ask for a copy of it.
Yeah, you want to spearhead this part?
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay. Thank you. Much appreciated. While you're doing that, you want to give them the heads up that we're starting, we're starting to work in Marshall Park master planning.
Well, let me just ask for the copy of the policies. I don't want to get into something else that I can't speak about.
All right, fine.
Focus,
All right, I think we're done, folks.
focus.
It is 8:59. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
It's very quick.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock is my Cinderella time. I need to be up.
Quick roll call on that. Susanna,
Aye.
Anna,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and an I for myself. Thanks, folks. We will see you at the end of September.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Nice seeing you all.
Night.
Good.